I welcome you all for my talk on the gamma knife radiosurgery for the skull-base meningiomas. Skull base is a difficult location even for the surgeons when it is especially in the middle cranial fossa or the posterior cranial fossa because the lesion there is surrounded by the critical neurovascular structures and the eloquent areas of the brain which have a risk of injury there. These are my disclaimers, and I am proud to say that PGI Chandigarh is a member of Lexel Gamma Knife Society, International Radiosurgery Research Foundation, and various other professional bodies doing a very good job. There is no doubt that surgical resection of a meningioma and its dural attachment with the involvement of the bone is actually the best treatment of choice. If you find a meningioma like this, a convexity meningioma, then there is nothing better than a surgery because it immediately establishes the histopathology of the tumor, it maximizes the resection, it immediately relieves the mass effect compared to any kind of the radiation tool which takes around 6 months to 3 years for its effect to appear. It has the minimum neurological complications, it improves the survival, and it gives the best long-term outcome. Especially if this tumor has a presentation with seizure, then radiosurgery has lesser chance of improvement in the seizure. This lesion is actually causing an irritation of the cerebral cortex. Removing this lesion by surgery provides the best possible outcome to the patient. But there are limitations of surgery. Even when you excise it completely, there are chances that the tumor will recur. This happens especially with the gross total resection, and it has been found that even with the gross total resection, the recurrence rates are around 18 to 25% over a decade period. In surgically inaccessible locations such as petroclavial location, cavernous sinus location, the chances of complete resection are very less. The recurrences are high when the lesion is in close contact with the neurovascular structures and with the higher grade lesions because they have a tendency to recur again and again. My objective in this talk is to give you an overview of the gamma knife radiosurgery for meningiomas in skull-base locations and for the different WHO grades, their outcome, the safety and the complication profile of gamma knife radiosurgery. The factors which affect the outcome are the WHO grade, the location of the tumor, its size, and other factors such as age, the timing of radiosurgery in respect to surgery, and differentiation between a benign looking tumor and one with a malignant tendency with a higher Ki-67 and VEGF profile. Gamma knife can be used as a primary treatment modality or as a secondary treatment modality. A primary gamma knife, which means the tumor has not been touched with surgery and only on the basis of the radiology we are treating it. It is being done in tumors with a small tumor size, small or moderate sized tumors that demonstrate serial growth on the skin. Supposedly you had a tumor and then you planned that the patient is asymptomatic, it was just an incidental detection, and you kept patient on an observation, which is not a bad option. But if the tumor on the subsequent scan down the line 6 months or 1 year shows an increase in the tumor size, then it's better to go for a radiosurgery to stop the growth of the tumor. And meningiomas in the critical anatomical locations where the surgical risk is high, it's better to go for a primary gamma knife radiosurgery. Secondary gamma knife means we are giving radiosurgery for the recurrent or the residual tumor. It is a part of the multimodal approach with planned subtotal resection. If there is a small recurrence in the grade 2 and grade 3 meningioma after the primary surgery and the patient has earlier received intensity modulatory radiation treatment, and then after some time you find that there is a recurrence, which is a nodular recurrence, small in size, that part can be treated with the secondary gamma knife radiosurgery. Now the important question is that why do you want to go with a WHO grade to decide how should you do it? First, we will come with the landmark article. This article was written by Donald Simpson, by whose name we have the Simpson grading system. So the question we have, should the WHO grade 1 residual tumor be put on a wait and watch strategy? There are still lots of people who think that it is a WHO grade 1 tumor. It's an innocent tumor. It's a benign tumor. And we should just put this patient on wait and watch strategy. If it increases in size, then we will give radiation treatment. If we go with the extent of resection, with the Simpson grade 1 resection, the chances of recurrence over a decade period are 9%, with grade 2 19%, grade 3 29%, grade 4 40%. For the grade 5 resection, which is practically not a resection, just a histopathological evaluation, the results are not available. And there were comparative evaluation after the publication of this study with the different kind of the strategies such as surgery alone or radiotherapy alone or surgery plus radiotherapy. It has been found that 70% rate of the tumor progression is seen in patients with partial resection and no adjuvant radiotherapy. So only 1/3 of the patients actually remain without any growth in the tumor volume in the observation period, and 2/3 of the patients show a growth on the follow-up scans, and this is a substantial number of the patient. Though we have improved in our surgical armamentarium, there are areas which are prone for a residual tumor, and these areas are paracellular location, posterior fossa, sphenoid ridge. As you can see here, the chances of complete excision are seen maximally in the olfactory groove or orbital location, and best in the convexity location. But it reduces drastically when it is a paracellular location, posterior fossa, sphenoid ridge, because the surgeon tries to avoid any injury which can adversely affect the quality of life of the patient. And in those cases, you have a residual tumor. And even if this tumor is WHO grade 1, this tumor demands a radiation treatment, because giving a radiation would stop its growth and improve the quality of life. Meningiomas do recur after surgery, and it has been found that the progression-free survival, or the recurrence-free survival actually, after the resection of the WHO grade 1 meningioma is only 74%, for grade 2 23%, and for grade 3 it's only 3%. So if it is not a grade 1 meningioma, then the chances of recurrence are very high, and even for a grade 1 meningioma, which most of the neurosurgeons consider as an innocent meningioma, the recurrence happens in a substantial number of the patients. This is a very robust study with a long-term tumor control of benign intracranial meningiomas after radiosurgery in a series of 4,565 patients. So you can see here that compared to the 74%, now the progression-free survival is 95%, and this I am talking about WHO grade 1 meningioma. Down the line 10 years, it reduces to 80%, but it's much better than just an observation of a residual meningioma. So the tumor control rate for a WHO grade 1 after radiosurgery, this is the data from the Pittsburgh series, is 92% for a WHO grade 1, 50% for WHO grade 2, and only 17% for a WHO grade 3. So in its natural history, a WHO grade 1, grade 3 meningioma is not very better or different from just a glioma. I like this commentary because there is always a confusion, especially for the people who follow the old tradition, that should we give a radiosurgery, proactive radiosurgery for the residual cranial based meningiomas. This is a commentary by Lunsford over this article that because of the low complication rates and high tumor control rates, the option to simply observe incompletely resected meningiomas seems increasingly less reasonable, and if patients needed initial microsurgery and residual tumor remains, which is the option that maximizes the patient's outcome, then the residuals should receive radiosurgery. I would rather say it now, residuals must receive radiosurgery. But before attempting radiosurgery, especially for a primary radiosurgery when you do not have any histopathological evidence, you should be clear in your mind for these questions. Is the imaging consistent with the presumed diagnosis? Can we deliver an effective dose safely without giving any undue radiation to the surrounding structures or causing a radiation injury? Is the tumor volume safe for the radiation therapy? And will the treatment meet the goals of the patient and the doctor? And that remains the most important factor for your consideration. You should have a specific goal in your mind, and your patient's expectations should have a realistic realization that this is I am going to get, or this is an extra advantage I am going to have when I receive a radiosurgery for a meningioma. For an asymptomatic meningioma, for an incidental meningioma, there is a level 2 evidence that these tumors, 2/3 of the patients experience tumor growth in lifetime and 1/3 will eventually require any treatment. That is the level 2 evidence, despite knowing that asymptomatic meningioma is a benign tumor. And the clinical and radiological outcome after proactive gamma knife are definitely better than the natural course without any intervention. And these are with the RANO 2015 guidelines and EANO 2016 guidelines. It has been found that stereotactic radiosurgery provides equivalent tumor control to the Simpson grade 1 excision for patients with small to medium sized meningiomas. When we call it small, it is up to 35 millimeter in size. The 5 and 7 year progression-free survival between Simpson grade 1 excision and a proactive gamma knife radiosurgery remains the same. There is practically no difference between the Simpson grade 1 excision and gamma knife radiosurgery, and gamma knife radiosurgery alone provided a higher progression-free survival if you cannot achieve a Simpson grade 1 excision. So that's a very bold but a true statement, that the radiosurgery is equivalent to Simpson grade 1 excision for a small to medium sized meningioma, and this fact should be taken into consideration when it is in a surgically difficult location such as a paracellular meningioma. If you cannot achieve a Simpson grade 1 excision, then it's better to take the patient for gamma knife radiosurgery without any surgical intervention. If you go for a convex city meningiomas, if we go with a subgroup analysis of the meningiomas, you would find that around 30% of meningiomas are convex city meningiomas. And in those cases, it is a straightforward surgery. As I told earlier, in these cases, Simpson grade 1 excision is the preferred approach. If you can do it safely, elegantly, without creating a deficit, as Professor Atul Goyal says about it. But in non-surgical small to medium-sized tumors, gamma knife radiosurgery provides a reasonable therapeutic option for the durable tumor control with a low toxicity profile, and the 3 and 5 year progression-free survival is 95% and 95% and 86%. That's a significantly good outcome. Symptomatic peritumoral edema or radiation necrosis may happen in around 5% of these patients, and the patient should be warned about this option if you are considering a primary radiosurgery for a large convex city meningioma, because these tumors are better treated with the surgery. But if the tumor is presenting with such kind of a meningioma, always look at the T2 scan of the patient. This tumor has presented to me and was referred by somebody for the gamma knife radiosurgery. When I got the scan, I found that there is a tumor sitting in the skull base, and it has a hyperintensity on the T2 scan, which is suggestive of edema. In these cases, surgical excision is always better when the tumor is causing an inflammatory reaction in the surrounding brain parenchyma. The seizure, you would hardly get any control with radiosurgery. If the presentation is seizures, go with surgical excision if it is in a surgically accessible location. Coming to the second variety, the parasagittal or the Felsheim meningiomas. They are the second most common intracranial location for a meningioma. The problem with that, for the complete excision, happens with the involvement of the venous sinuses. When the venous sinus is involved and the tumor is extending into the venous sinus, it becomes very difficult for the tumor for a complete excision. And in those cases, the progression-free survival is only 85% at 3 years, and at 5 years, it's 70%. So you find a lower tumor control rate than convexity meningiomas. These patients should be treated with radiosurgery, but compared to the other locations, the chances of a post-radiosurgery subtle increase in edema are higher than any other location. And the reason is because of a longer dural trail. The complication which may happen is a post-radiosurgery new or increased peritumoral edema, which is seen in around 10% of these patients. This patient was a case of WHO grade 1 treated with gamma knife radiosurgery, and at the end of the 3 years you can see that nearly around 30% of the tumor is remaining and the rest of the tumor has decreased in size. The factors which decide the chances of the peritumoral edema are actually how much tumor volume you are taking, how much extra brain is in contact with the tumor, and what is the radiation dose. If you are prescribing the radiation more than 14 gray, that the chances of peritumoral edema are high in a parasagittal or falcine location. Cavernous sinus meningioma. This is a formidable challenge for all of us, for surgeons, for radiosurgeons, for everybody. Because this is a location, it is a 3D structure in the skull base which has internal carotid artery, third, fourth, fifth, sixth cranial nerve. Sometimes it is affecting the optic apparatus also. If you consider cavernous sinus like any other thing, I consider it like Chandni Chowk. It is a very hugely crowded area with the critical neurovascular structures in its vicinity. Most of the times when we consider the tumors which are found in the cavernous sinus are cavernous sinus hemangiomas, cavernous sinus meningiomas, cavernous sinus schwannomas, or the trigeminal schwannomas which are extending into the cavernous sinus. Sometimes it is a clinoidal meningioma or medial sphenoidal meningioma or a bony tumor which extends into the cavernous sinus. The critical factors for the microneurosurgery were involvement of the internal carotid artery, encasement of the cranial nerves, and the patient's age, because the surgery is a very morbid procedure. You have to go through most of the times with an frontotemporal orbitozygomatic osteotomy, with an interdural dissection, and then into the sinus which bleeds horrendously. The critical factors for the radiosurgery is the proximity to the optic apparatus or the chiasm. That used to be a critical factor when we used to give a single session radiosurgery where it was difficult to preserve the optic apparatus. If it is not a 360-degree encasement, then a dose-fractionated gamma knife radiosurgery is a very valid alternative for the lesions which are in proximity to the optic apparatus. And contrary to the microneurosurgery, involvement of carotid artery, sinus, cranial nerves, patient age is no more a contraindication for gamma knife. Even if your hands are of gold, like Nico Dolink, the chances of gross total resection with a cavernous sinus meningioma are only 20 to 76%, with a substantial risk of the recurrence and a permanent nerve deficit, which becomes a devastating complication in these patients because of the involvement of the extraocular muscles in around 1/3 of the patient. So the role of the surgery in a cavernous sinus meningioma is only for downstaging the tumor, keeping it away from the optic apparatus, and then treating it with the radiosurgery. If you follow the long-term studies, you find that the actuarial 5-year progression-free survival is always in the range of 93 to 95%. Even when the tumor does not decrease substantially in the volume, there is a significant improvement which is disproportionately better in the clinical parameters. So this lady presented with the cavernous sinus meningioma. She is 42-year-old female. She had a complete ptosis on the left side and headache. She received a single session gamma knife radiosurgery, and within 2 years her ptosis completely improved, headache completely gone, and after 6 years the MRI shows a complete, nearly around 80 to 90% reduction in the tumor volume. This is another patient with a cavernous sinus meningioma. Though the lesion in 2 years didn't reduce significantly, but the patient has a remarkable clinical improvement. So is the surgery for cavernous sinus meningioma out of practice these days? Well, I can say that its role is only when it is near the optic apparatus to downstage the tumor. Gamma knife radiosurgery is an acceptable treatment modality up to 3 cm, and it is an adjuvant treatment for lesions greater than 3 centimeters. The 5-year tumor control rate is 95 to 96%, and even if it is large in size, then you can go with a dose fractionated gamma knife with equal results. Petroclival meningioma, and another area of surgical morbidity and mortality. And there is a nearly uniform pessimistic experience in the surgical arm. Postoperative complications are seen in around 67% of the patients. Notwithstanding the high morbidity, aggressive removal of the large PCM, means a petroclival meningioma, does not achieve a high rate of the radical removal. And this is by one of the best in the field of the petroclival meningiomas. So if you go with a literature evaluation of the surgical series, the mortality is found in 0 to 10%, major morbidity in nearly around 30%, cranial nerve deficit in around 47%, and gross total resection is achieved in only around 48%. So nearly 50% of these patients have a residual tumor, and now with an added on cranial nerve deficit. So it is not advisable to attempt a Simpson grade 1 and 2 resection in the difficult cases because they are encasing the lower cranial nerves, vertebropapillary complex, and sometimes the arachnoid is not there when it is near the brainstem. With Simpson grade 3 and 4 resection, the recurrence rates are as high as 29 to 40%. So, it's a philosophical question whether for a petroclival meningioma, radical resection always the best option. When more than half of the patients are suffering from the postoperative morbidity and 5% are dying in the hospital admission in this era. So it is not advisable to attempt a Simpson grade 1 and 2 resection in the difficult locations. So you need to ask a question that today's surgical resection of a skull-based meningioma is associated with the high or low risk of the neurological deficit. Despite our better armamentarium, the risk is still pretty high. And the expectations? Today patients and doctors both need a progression-free survival and a deficit survival so that that young patient does not have a bad quality of life. He should be socially acceptable. He should be volitionally active. He should be a productive person of the society. So you need to decide between gross total resection, subtotal resection, near total resection, and this priority would be influenced by the age and the life expectancy, tumor size, adherence, postoperative morbidity, patient's desire, and obviously your experience, skills, and the philosophy. If you compare the long-term control rate of surgery versus gamma knife radiosurgery, it's nearly the same. At the end of 12 years, in both the arms, 82% of the patients had a long-term control rate, but in the surgical arm, this control rate was achieved with significant risk of the surgery and the cranial nerve deficits. So this patient was primarily attempted with surgery and it was not a successful surgery. So this patient, for its residual tumor, only 5% of the tumor could be taken out from outside, and we gave it a gamma knife. Within 1 year, you can see the development of a CSF cleft. So there is a circumferential reduction of the tumor volume that you can see over here, and the brainstem starts opening over here. It is very necessary to follow these patients because there is risk of around 6 to 7% of the patients, they may have an increase in the tumor volume despite giving a radiosurgery. So this is a very good paper which I like from the University of Pittsburgh with an evaluation of 252 patients. They had an MRI at every 3 months and they found that the tumor percent change and rate of the change was evaluated at every 3 months. Tumors that progressed all demonstrated volume increase at 6 months MRI. So that becomes a very crucial time. If you find that a tumor who received radiation treatment at a 6-month follow-up MRI showed an increase in the tumor volume, this is a bad case and probably these 7% of these patients might need a surgery or another adjuvant treatment. But 93% of the patients either have a reduction in the tumor volume or a stabilized tumor volume. And if you have a recurrent tumor or a progression post GKRS, then it's always preferred to go for a microsurgical resection. I tell you with my experience why does it happen. If you gave gamma knife as a primary treatment modality and it didn't respond to the radiosurgery, then there are high chances that this was not a WHO grade 1 meningioma. This happens in very less percentage of patients, but if it is happening, then probably you might be dealing with a WHO grade 2 or grade 3 meningioma, and in that case, it's better to go for a surgery. Even after surgery, if there is a residue in a grade 2 and the grade 3 meningioma, then it's preferable to go with an intensity modulated radiation treatment rather than stereotactic radiosurgery. Stereotactic radiosurgery should be used in these cases only when it is a small nodular lesion after prior radiotherapy with extra margin to the gross total volume. So this is by a series of Hasegawa. He gave radiation to a partially resected cavernous sinus meningioma, and they found that the tumor had actually out of field growth, and they later on found that it was a WHO grade 3 meningioma. How does gamma knife work over it, and what must be the dose? The gamma knife causes loss of the replicative ability of the tumor cells and vascular hyalinization. When the biopsy specimens were checked, there was role of inflammation, demyelination, cystic changes, coagulative necrosis, edema, vasculopathy, and reactive astrocytosis. The dose given was 12 to 18 Ray at 50% isodose. For an atypical or anaplastic meningioma, which are the WHO grade 2 and 3 meningiomas, 25 to 35% are atypical or anaplastic. They have a significant aggressive growth pattern and an unfavorable morbidity and mortality profile, which makes them a less suitable candidate for gamma knife radiosurgery. Should SRS be used for WHO grade 2 and 3 meningioma? It shouldn't be used on a regular basis. The long-term tumor control beyond 2 years is variable. As I showed in my earlier slides, the tumor control rate is only 50% and 17%. The appropriate tumor volume is not found. And Polak et al. Have reported that most of these patients need radiosurgery only when there is a recurrence, a nodular recurrence, after prior IMRT. So this is a WHO grade 2 and grade 3 comparative evaluation. After radiosurgery, the tumor control are 50% and 17.2%, and 5-year survival for WHO grade 2 is 70% and grade 3 is only 20%, which is just like a grade 3 glioma. There are various society guidelines which show the result and the option of the different treatment modalities, and radiosurgery might be the first option in the small WHO grade 1 meningiomas in specific locations. Patients with WHO grade 1 meningioma who cannot undergo surgery can be treated by fractionated radiotherapy or radiosurgery. Combining a subtotal resection and radiosurgery should be considered to allow comprehensive tumor treatment while reducing the risk of the adverse effects from the treatment in the WHO grade 1 meningiomas. Now come to the neurofibromatosis type 2. These patients have a tendency to have multiple meningiomas at a young age, diffuse meningiomas. Most of these are surgically accessible locations, but sometimes in surgically non-accessible locations. SRS is a relatively effective treatment modality for these patients. So this is one article which is in press, and with this we can conclude that GCARS achieves an effective tumor control with a low and generally acceptable rate of complications in NF2 associated meningiomas. If you go with the location, the skull-based locations have a lesser chances of progression-free survival in comparison to the non-skull based ones, and if the tumor volume is more than 1.6 cc, then they have a tendency to progress. Hypofractionated gamma knife radiosurgery has a promising role for large skull-based meningiomas which are in close proximity to the optic apparatus or another critical location, and it can be practiced with frameless stereotactic radiosurgery, especially with the ICON, with a 5 fraction in the 5 gray and 50% isodose. The short-term results show a very good tumor control and functional outcome which is safe and effective, and it is a reasonable alternative to the microneedle surgery in the selected group of the patients. So this is from the Piero Picozzi group. There was a tumor which was in vicinity of the optic apparatus. They preserved the optic apparatus from the 8-gray radiation exposure, calculate the biological equivalent dose and cumulative radiation exposure in the fractionated gamma knife pertaining to the optic apparatus and the other structures. We also practice it for the large volume petroclival meningiomas and glomus tumors, as this patient didn't accept surgery, So we give a fractionated gamma knife with 5.9 Gray in 3 fractions, and you can see that there is a gradual reduction in the tumor volume, and the fourth ventricle is expanding and the brainstem is getting decompressed. Yes, radiosurgery also comes with its adverse radiation effect and its own set of complications, though very less in the percentage. And these complications might be radiation-induced edema, vascular occlusion, radiation-induced malignancy, and the radiation-induced optic neuropathy. If you go with the adverse radiation effect analysis, these are noted in around 8% patient population. But maximum of these are only radiological complications. When you see them, there is a hyperintensity on the T2-weighted scan with no clinical impact. Series with the higher complication rates treated WHO grade 2 and 3 lesions at the parasitical locations with a higher dose, and majority were manageable only with the steroids. Only a few needed higher doses, higher drugs like the bevacizumab, pentoxifylline, or any surgical intervention. This is one of my patients who was a parasitical meningioma, a residual tumor. I gave it radiation and it had a florid edema for which we didn't respond to any radiation treatment for any drug therapy, and I had to do a decompressive surgery for this patient. But this happens very rarely. If the tumor is very close to the skull and the dermal appendages are receiving more than 4 Gray radiation, 3 Gray radiation, then there are chances that the patient may suffer from a temporary non-cicatricial focal alopecia. Remember, this alopecia is a temporary phenomenon. Most of these patients regain the similar hair texture, color, and length within 2 months. You can go through this publication, and this is nothing to be very serious about. Radiosurgery leads to malignancy. That's a very rare complication. It has been found in only 0.01 to 0.001% population, which has been published in an article in the Lancet Oncology in 2018. And at 10 years, the risk of malignancy is actually not different from the general population. Vessel stenosis from gamma knife radiosurgery for benign lesions. It's a very rare phenomena. Only anecdotal case reports are there. Vessels have a very high radio resistance. I have no personal complication over more than nearly now 3,000 patients so far, and there has been a study right now which showed that only when the tumor is already inside the ICA, encroaching it, decreasing its volume significantly, especially in the cavernous sinus meningiomas or pituitary adenoma which are inside the ICA, then there might be a risk, but I have been lucky so far. Similarly, in the literature, there are only some case reports over it. So in summary, SRS is safe and effective treatment modality for WHO grade 1 meningioma, and its results are similar to the surgery. Treatment complications are acceptable for the properly selected patients. Use of SRS for WHO grade 2 and 3 needs further evaluation. It is not a face-off with microneurosurgery. It's actually a balanced approach. Remove only till you do not create deficit. You need to make a team approach for treating these meningiomas. These are usually benign and the patient should enjoy a good quality of life without any deficit. Thank you very much. You can ask me any question on the email ID given or on the Twitter account. Thank you very much.